Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Arc podcast. Dallas here, joined by Levi. Levi, how's it going?
It's going well, man. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. All right, Levi. I guess we could touch on UT Martin, but what is it to say? Tennessee dominated. Unless you have anything you really want to get off your chest about the game.
No, sir. That's like you predicted before the game even started last week. There's no need to even talk about it. So
That sounds good to me. All right, so Syracuse coming up on Tuesday night, tomorrow night. Just got a word a little while ago that everyone did that Tennessee would be wearing their new dark mode uniforms for the game. Have you seen them yet?
yes, sir. They're nice. They remind me of the Balls baseball dark mode jerseys. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thought the same. I'm kind of curious how the crowd, if they're going to turn out in dark mode or not, or if it's just going to be orange as normal. Be kind of cool visual if everyone wears black. But and
Talked to mom already, and she's ready to go full dark mode. So we may just show up in full black tomorrow. Who knows?
be pretty cool visual. But anyway, Syracuse is led by Adrian Autry, who is in his second year. Syracuse no longer runs a 2-3 zone. But Levi, you got any opening thoughts on Syracuse?
They are one of the more boring teams in the country. They don't turn the basketball over whatsoever. They have a top 10 offensive efficiency in turnover percentage, and then they're absolutely horrific, almost dead last in the country of turning teams over. It's going to be a very interesting game because if they can bog it down and make us miss some shots, they could easily make this a game. But I'll tell you, Dallas, the fact that they shoot 27% from three as a team does not bode well for them. As you know, you're not going to get very many rim looks against Tennessee. You're not going to get very many paint touches. The shot that Rick Barnes wants you to take is the three ball. And if they shoot 27% like they have most of the year this year from three against us, it's not going to be a close ball game.
Absolutely. You touched on their excitement level on offense, and just ironically, I happened to have looked at the pace earlier, and actually, they have the 38th best pace in college basketball per Haslam metrics, and then Tennessee has the 239th. So they may be boring, but they do it fast, which I guess is a good or maybe a negative thing, depending on which way you look at it. I mean, you watch Syracuse, they definitely prefer the inside over the perimeter, and then Tennessee does a good job of forcing those outside shots. They've performed better away from home, it seems, which is kind of weird to me. Carrier Dome seems like a pretty cool place to play, and they seem to perform better away. They got Eddie Lampkin's probably their best player. If I had to, he's a transfer from TCU, Colorado, both schools. He went to both schools, transferred from there. He's a 6'11", 265, so that should be a good matchup for Felix Okpara. Had you seen any of Lampkin play yet?
Yeah, Lampkin can play. He's a tough guy. I don't know that him alone in the paint can beat us. They don't have any other big man necessarily that has some season to him. They play a guy Jair Davis a little bit in the 3-4 slot, but past Davis and Lampkin, they play freshmen down low, and I don't know that these freshmen are going to be all too seasoned enough to be able to compete with our big guys. They do have McLeod, who's huge. I think he's what 7'5", something like that.
Yeah,
He if they put him out there, we'll run circles around him. He doesn't move his feet well enough.
that would
So
be a good situation to run Igor out at the five and just let him feast.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I was looking at their lineup as well, and probably the second best player, I'd have to say JJ Starling. He's a little bit of a taller guard at 6'4", averages 19 points per game, 46% from the field, but as you mentioned, 29% from three. There seems to be a common trend when you look at their roster. They don't really have anyone that can really shoot the three to the ability it would take to beat Tennessee. Looking at Haslam metrics right now, they have Tennessee projected to run away with it. Actually, it's a 87-63 prediction. Do you have any qualms about that?
No, sir, not at all. Park Torvik here has us 82-63 plus 19.2 points. So
Sounds about right.
I'm assuming that that's kind of how it. I'll honestly be surprised if this team gets over 60 on us. With the way they shoot the three, it's just a really bad stylistic matchup for them. They're not going to get very many paint touches. They're not going to get any, as I've already pointed out. They're just not going to be able to get to the paint on us. I don't believe they don't really have a great true point guard. So I expect us pretty much just come out, take care of business. Plus dark mode, which is funny because we debuted the cream uniforms 2 years ago against Texas in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, and then now we're in the ACC SEC Challenge, and now we're debuting dark mode. So it seems like Rick Barnes has a little bit of a different way of firing his guys up for these out of conference challenges, which is kind of fun to see.
Especially when it's one of the lower tier schools in the conference. I mean, if we was playing like a Duke or maybe a North Carolina, maybe you don't see it, but against a Syracuse, you have to do something like that. I touched on them no longer playing a 2-3 zone earlier, and right now, Kim Palm, I think you mentioned it, has them 145th in defense, which whew, I'm not so sure if they was ever that bad under Boeheim and with his 2-3 zone. And I just want to kind of go off track here and ask you, what are your opinions about the 2-3 zone in college basketball today?
You don't see many teams run it anymore with the just the floor spacing and shooting that teams have now. It's very hard to win a title with the 2-3. I guess in my lifetime and yours as well, we're about the same age. The
Yeah.
only teams I've seen win one, which is funny, is Syracuse with Carmelo Anthony, which if you have a guy like Carmelo, it's a little different. And then Louisville. But the Louisville didn't run a 2-3. They ran a little like 1-2-2. So the zone now is you can get shot out of the zone real quick. You'll see these smaller schools, like we've already seen it with a couple of the younger or smaller teams that we've went against. They run a 2-3. It just kind of throws, a bigger team off a little bit. But Tennessee, if a team does want to run 2-3 against us, they're going to get eaten alive because Igor Milicic is just so good at that high. He's just so good, man. Just right there at the free throw line extended, you just drop it down into him. He's a great passer. He can take one dribble and shoot the floater. We have a perfect team, in my opinion, to break up a 2-3 zone. But I'm not a huge fan of zone defense in general. I don't think that you can put pressure on a team. Syracuse used to be great at it. They'd have 6'7", 6'8" guys out top, and they could extend that thing so far out that it just felt like they were taking up the entire floor. But you're just not going to see a whole lot of teams run a zone and it be successful anymore. And like I said, two teams in our lifetime that have won a title while running zone
much
at this point. And like I said, with how the game's changed, people shoot the ball a heck of a lot better now than they used to. So it's a lot harder to be able to run a zone effectively against a lot of these bigger Division I level teams.
I agree. And the reason I ask is I used to have an argument all the time about 2-3 zone, and people would say, it's kind of a coward's way out if your team is not able to guard the paint. And I always had the differing opinion that it wasn't necessarily a coward's way out. I mean, it's scheme. And I mean, in the NFL, you've seen teams go to too high safeties to limit the deep ball, and it's working. You're not seeing people call that a coward really way out. I mean, if it works, go for it. Staying on the football subject for just a moment, did you happen to catch Syracuse and Miami play?
I did. That was a wild game. Helps Tennessee out quite a bit. I think Miami's been a fraud most of the year this year. They've gotten lucky. They've had some weird games, a Hail Mary at the very end against Virginia Tech where it was called a touchdown and then reviewed, and it was a touchdown, then it wasn't a touchdown. Miami's just, I'll never understand it. It was funny. Josh Pate has a little thing going around right now where he said this is an SEC team playing in the ACC, which is kind of hilarious to look back at this point. I do feel bad for Cam Ward, though, because he's a heck of a football player. They're just not what everybody, I guess, thought they were at the beginning of the season. But it was a heck of a game. I would assume that playing in the Carrier Dome, which Tennessee did in '98, only won by 1 point. I would assume that's a tough place to go play.
Definitely. And the reason I ask is I don't know if you saw this, but a Syracuse reporter, a lady by the name of Ashley Winskowski, accused the Miami mascot of hitting on her during the game and asking for her number. But as I'm sitting here looking at her, I can't say I blame him, but I was just going to say that Smokey may be on the prowl tomorrow night, so just look out for that if she were to make the trip down.
I only sit about 12 rows off the court, so I might be on the prowl myself as well. You never know.
I'll make sure to get a hold of you there if you are. but I'm gonna guess you have the Vols taking tomorrow night's game as well.
Yes, sir. I would expect something around a 30-point win, to be honest. As I've stated already, I just don't see any way that Syracuse gets the paint touches. I will say that I'll give Syracuse some props. They do not give up offensive rebounds. They're number one in the country, according to Bartorvik, when it comes to defensive rebounding. They don't give up offensive rebounds to the other team. So if we're missing shots, they could make it a game. I just don't see any way that they can score enough to compete with us. And it's just something weird when it comes to the balls when they switch uniforms and the crowd gets into it. The crowd will probably likely be pretty fired up tomorrow night because of the uniforms. People want to get their kids out to see the black uniforms and all the fun stuff. So I expect them to kind of run into a hornet's nest. And I honestly would like to go through this challenge, Dallas, eventually, sometime on the show today to figure out, just make some predictions of who we think is going to win what game. Because there's some really good games in this.
Maybe we can go ahead and run through that now if you'd like.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it, man.
All right. So actually, this is some of the pick'ems I had. We was going to do a pick'em before the end of the show, and we'll put out a graphic and everything about who won the
I
pick'em and
didn't mean to
everything.
cut you off on that. Sorry.
That's fine. We can throw it in. I got Kentucky at Clemson Tuesday, 9:30, ESPN. Who do you have there?
I'm not going to be a hater and say crazy things, but I honestly like Clemson in that game.
All right. I had Kentucky myself. Basically, just I'm not so sure how good Kentucky really is, but I'm also not really too sure how good Clemson is. And just that type of offense Kentucky runs, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. The second one I had marked here was Ole Miss at Louisville. What do you have there?
I like Louisville in that one. I did see that Pryor tore his ACL and is out for the year, which is a rough loss for Louisville. He's the big man that has the platinum blonde hair and the
Yeah.
sleeve tattoo.
Yeah, I had Louisville as well.
That's rough though. That's a rough loss for them. He's a guy that brings a lot of energy. They're still going to continue to just come out and shoot threes though. So
And I mean, definitely a positive for Tennessee. The more Louisville wins, that make that win they had in Louisville look much better as they continue to win. Let's go moving on. Auburn at Duke. I have Duke. Who do you have?
I like Auburn in that one. I like Jim Nybroom matchup against Cooper Flag. That's going to be a heck of a matchup. I think everybody should tune in just to watch those two go at it. I like Auburn to go into Cameron and get it done.
I almost took Auburn myself. I'm just not a big believer in John Shire, but sure to God, he's got to win one of these somewhat big games. I mean, he can't go up zero for whatever he is now. So I took my money with Duke, and I'll pay for it when they lose. Well, moving on, Bama at UNC.
I'll take UNC in that one. I don't have any reason why. UNC has just not looked great so far this year. As we know, last year we went to Chapel Hill. Dalton, put on a show, showed everybody who he is, and we still came up short. UNC in those games like that crowd's just it feels like they're just sitting on top of you. So I'll take the home court advantage and say UNC in that one.
I took Bama myself. I'm like kind of like Kentucky. I'm not so sure exactly how good Alabama is. I mean, we know Nate Oates is a good offensive coach, but I mean been tucked to the wire by Rutgers, and Oregon finally beat them. And I can't remember who the team they played before Rutgers was, but they gave them a pretty good fit as well. I forgot to mention the times here. Let me just run this down real quick. Ole Miss at Louisville is Tuesday at 9 o'clock on the ACC network. Auburn at Duke is Wednesday at 9:15 on ESPN. And Bama at UNC is Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. on ESPN. Are there any more games from the ACC SEC challenge you'd like to touch on, or you just want to throw out your prediction on which conference wins the challenge?
I believe honestly the SEC could sweep. It's that I think the ACC is just that down this year. I'm just still a little irritated with our draw. Like I said, I'm not
Yeah.
mad about it, but it's we won the conference last year. I don't understand. We made the Elite Eight. Alabama's the only SEC team that I guess you could say had a better season than us last season because they made the Final Four, but we won the conference outright in the season, made it to the Elite Eight. I think that the national guys, I guess, assumed that with no Dalton Connect, we would take a step back. So they gave us Syracuse, but I'd much prefer to be playing a Duke or heck, man, I'd like to play at Clemson or something like that.
That'd be very fun. And yeah, you're right. I don't know when the national media is going to learn. You do not doubt Rick Barnes. He's going to have a contender in the SEC and maybe a national contender as well. And pretty much like you, I have the SEC taking it. I do think Louisville is going to beat Ole Miss. That wasn't just a whim. I actually do believe Louisville is going to take that. I can see the ACC maybe getting 2 to 3 wins at most. And now switching gears to the segment that Levi, unless you had anything else. Do you have anything else?
I'd just like to shout out the ACC SEC Challenge for the women's basketball side. The Lady Vols play Florida State at home
Absolutely.
Wednesday night. It's going to be a real fun one. Maybe the biggest game so far for Kim Caldwell and her girls. So it should be a great time to really figure out where the Lady Vols are. Florida State's a typical tournament team. I almost said playoff because here we are, football season, and everything's about the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Late, anyways. But I like to just shout out the Lady Vols. Hopefully they can come out. I got tickets to that one too, so pretty excited to go watch the Lady Vols. I'll be in Thompson Bowling tomorrow night, and then I'll be in Thompson Bowling on Wednesday night just to check out the Vols. And I'm hoping the Lady Vols look as good as they have all year long. I really like Caldwell's system, so hopefully the Lady Vols can absolutely get it done.
Absolutely. Any word? Have you seen any word on if Joel Spear will be back for tomorrow night's game on Wednesday?
Brian Rice today on the radio said that she is expected to play, but more of a game time decision. She's going to come out, warm up. They'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All I know is that if when it comes down to it, Brian Rice is about as good as it gets when it comes
Absolutely.
to knowing what the Lady Vols and what they do and everything. So
Now we will switch to. I came up with the segment, and Levi he named it "Hardly Knowing." I think what you called it, correct?
hardly knowing Hoopers, baby.
Absolutely. Where we're going to just give you a name of some guy from a smaller school who you may not have heard of that you need to keep an eye on because in the day of the transfer portal, they could be in a conference near you soon. Levi, I'll let you go ahead and give out your pick.
I like Alan Breed. He's a senior at McNeese State, but man, can he play? He fills it up. Senior, 6'3", absolutely incredible. Keeps the ball in his hand. Will Wade style guy. Likes to get to the rim, but overall, just really just a solid hooper. And anytime you can turn on McNeese State, keep an eye on number 7 because that guy, as much as I hate to say it, is perfect for a Will Wade system.
It's just so wild to me that Will Wade is still coaching in college basketball. It's just that's I don't know.
He'll be at a major program in the next few years.
He will be. I'm kind of surprised that West Virginia didn't take a look at him personally, but I'm gonna have to
That that,
go.
that looks to have worked out okay for him. They're
Yeah,
pretty
yeah, it
solid
does.
this year.
And the guy I'm going to mention here is Abdi. I don't want to butcher this, so I really don't want to butcher this. Abdi Bashir Jr. is a sophomore at Monmouth. He is currently averaging 20 points per game, shooting 42% from the field. He had 38 against Seton Hall earlier this season and hit 10 threes, I do believe. So he is
Oof.
definitely a guy that I believe should be on your national radar for maybe a guy that could transfer out or whatever. He's a bucket and it's 6'7", a guard. That's perfect for today's basketball.
Absolutely. That's a big guy.
Have you
I
seen him?
watched that game actually.
Oh,
Yeah, I
you did?
watched a little of that game. I'm in a group chat on Twitter with a bunch of guys and they were saying, or X, whatever you want to call it, but they were talking about it. They're like, "Man, turn over this game. This guy can hoop." I was like, "All right, I'll turn it on." So I turned it on. I was like, all right, they weren't lying. This guy's a baller, man.
Yeah, I'm sad to say that now that you've called it Twitter, Elon's probably going to come get you. I'm going to have to find a new co-host. But you got
No.
anything else? You got anything else you want to add today,
I got
man?
I got one more. I got one more shout out to a little mid-major guy, Mikey Lewis from St. Mary's, shooting 42.4% from the field this year from three. Can absolutely fill it up. Just a freshman. I will not expect him to stay at St. Mary's, but man, you just never know about St. Mary's. Randy Bennett used to go to his basketball camps all the time growing up. Heck of a basketball coach. Maybe one of the most knowledgeable guys I've ever met when it
Saint,
comes to the sport. But no, what were you saying?
I was going to say St. Mary's is kind of like a I can't. It's a Santa Barbara or Santa Clara. either one, it doesn't really matter at this point. But they've kind of became a NBA pipeline. I mean, there's two OKC players currently, Jalen Williams and I believe who was the other one? Anyway, it doesn't matter. But Jalen Williams, and then no, he's not at OKC. He's at Golden State. Brandon Pernitsky, two
Yep.
guys straight from there, and
Pods.
yes, and they've that school is starting to pump out some talent. So keep an eye out on
Randy
them.
Bennett, man, he picks them out. This guy's just a freshman, true freshman. Mikey Lewis, 6'3" guard, can fill it up from outside, gets to the cup easy. He kind of reminds me of the guy that used to play for San Francisco when Todd Golden was there. That was really, really good. I think his last name was I can't remember, Abdullah or something like that. Do you have
Mhm.
a prediction for what seed the Vols are going to get? I continue to say a 2 to 3 seed. A lot of people are obviously high on the Vols, have us as a 1 seed. I believe Joe Lenardi came out with his first bracket of the year this year, which is hilarious to me because he finishes about last every year now with his bracketology. And I believe he had us as a 3 seed.
Sounds
So
sounds pretty fair. I've seen Tennessee's mocked as the 1 seed in the Lexington region, and as someone who lives about 35 minutes from Lexington, that would be a nice for me. I'm gonna say 2 seed as well.
I like us at a 2 or 3. I would prefer not to be a 2 again, and then they give us the toughest one other than, the best team in the country like they can continually do every year, but we'll see.
Yeah, we
I'd
don't
love to
seem
be in a bracket of chaos for once, and it seems like every time we are in a bracket of chaos, we just don't
run
win
into
the
the
game.
best team in the
Yeah,
field.
we run into a Loyola Chicago or a Michigan team that shot 26% from three typically and then goes for 48 against us.
I'm just going to openly plead to the NCAA committee to not put Tennessee in the same bracket as Kansas because I do not want to play Hunter Dickinson again. That's just not something I want to do.
I don't like playing that guy at all. He also just irritates me.
Absolutely, man. Well, I
Hey,
guess
it's
we'll
funny, the Lady Vols on Bart Torvik are top 25 now, the 25th team in the country. They've only played 5 games, and everybody else has played like 8 or 9. It's kind of weird.
they deserve to be ranked. I don't care what anyone says. I mean
Absolutely.
I
They
know that
have the 12th best offensive efficiency in the country,
yeah,
and they're shooting 47.5% in 3-point percentage at the moment, which is best for 13th in the country, according to efficiency. Obviously, they're not shooting that, but because if they were shooting that, they'd be number one. But you get what I'm saying.
yeah,
It's pretty
yeah.
nice. It's nice to see the Lady Balls, man.
Yeah, I mean the competition hasn't been the best, but still, I mean you gotta reward people for winning 50 games by 50. I don't care who they're playing. But anyway, I guess we'll wrap up the Beyond the Arc podcast for this week, and we will be back next week as always. From Dallas, signing off. Levi, everyone have a great week and go Vols.
Go Vols, man. Take it easy.